Vážení přátelé, děkujeme, že jste sešli v takovém hojném počtu, to jsme nečekali. Omlouvám se trochu za technické problémy, ale konečně můžeme začít. Já jsem moc rád, že dneska tady můžu uvítat dvojici designérů Alexander Gruis a Azusa Murakami, anglicko-japonské duo Studio Swine, kteří pracují s designem opravdu novými, takovými nečekanými způsoby a posouvají vůbec jako pojem a význam designu někam jinam. And now we will change into English because the guys will talk in English. And also I would like to introduce Julia Boy, which is also with guys here, and he is the filmmaker who is shooting some movies you will see here and after in Oko on today's screening. I will say something about it after the lecture also. So please, it's very pleasure to have you here, and we are really looking forward to your talk.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us here today. I'm Azusa and this is Alex, and we're Studio Swine. It all began in 2011. We both met at the Design Products course at the Royal College of Art in London. And we always felt like we didn't quite fit in because we both come from different backgrounds of art and architecture, and we're kind of quite new to product design, so we felt like we were approaching design in a quite a different way to what everyone else was doing. So we spent a lot of time thinking, what is design? I mean, after much thought, we thought, it could be this or that, but we sort of started working together on a project, and we came up with the name Studio Swine, which we thought it was quite refined because it sounds quite suave. But we also wanted to work in luxury design, so it was sending out quite mixed messages. And then we graduated from the RCA, and London has the most amount of designers graduating in the world. So it was really hard to get any opportunities once we graduated. And we wanted to do more ambitious things, and we wanted to start doing bigger projects. And we used to do quite a lot of walks around London when we were kind of not designing, because being offline makes you think bigger thoughts. So we did a lot of walks, and one day we came up with a really good idea of going to Sao Paulo. So we emailed a lot of people, applied to lots of residencies and funding, but we didn't really get anything out of it. But when you really believe in an idea, you just have to make it happen. So we just went there anyway, 3 months later, not knowing anyone, not having any contacts.
Why Sao Paulo?
Because Alex went to Sao Paulo a year before, and he really loved it there. And
to work on a project in a favela.
Okay.
And it was a really terrible project actually, but I saw like the potential and excitement of the place, and also like it's quite expensive living in London, and it actually was like a lot cheaper living in Sao Paulo, and it just had this amazing energy.
Yeah, and also the Olympics was happening and the World Cup was happening, so we thought it was going to be the next big place to be. So we kind of, made this grand idea, ambition, and we got there. So we got there, but then we didn't know anybody. So we tried to set up meetings, but that wasn't very successful. So we found this cheapest, smelliest hostel we can find in Sao Paulo. It's not like we were looking for the worst place to stay, but it just happened to be a really bad place. Because it was so smelly, we had to spend a lot of time outside of this hostel. So we spent all day walking around the city, researching, but fortunately a few days later, we found this lovely flat on Craigslist, but it was totally unfurnished, so it didn't have a fridge, didn't have a bed, didn't have a cooker, but it did have 2 swimming pools, outdoor pool and indoor pool. So so we slept on the floor, ate raw food, and went swimming every day. And a few months later, we accidentally found out that our landlord was a prostitute. But it was quite a pleasant place to stay. So during the day, we had not much to do. So we would walk around every day, walk around the city aimlessly, just to get to know the city, which is an odd thing to do because it's a city that's catered really for cars, and the streets are not really developed for walking. And it's an enormous city, and it's incredibly hot. And every day at around 3 o'clock, it kind of rains, torrential rain. But then as we were walking around, we started observing really interesting things that were happening on the streets. So we kept a blog called Daily Postcard from Brazil, and posted daily about what we found around the streets in Sao Paulo.
So just So for example, this trolley here was something that really excited us. It was like a kind of trolley that this lady was bringing to market, but it was made out of all the kind of scrap metal that had been, where can openers had been punched out of them. And then this is a kind of bicycle that's been made into a kind of knife sharpener, and he goes around all the different restaurants. They love steak there, and it's really tough steak, and you need sharp knives, so he kind of sharpens all the knives. And so just really, we did this every day for like 3 months, so we kind of made this big archive of, in Brazil they call it gambiarra, which is kind of improvised design and kind of making do and hacking things and all these kind of things.
Did you meet some Brazilian designers?
Yeah,
we did,
plenty, yeah.
Very good ones. So we started collecting things and archiving them into different categories, and soon we were really struck by how resourceful people were there, and how people from all over the world, all over Brazil, came to Sao Paulo to make a living on the street. And one of the things that we found really interesting were the catadores who go around the city collecting recyclable goods. And because we went out each day, we got to see them en route and got to study how they move around the city. And because we keep on seeing them in different parts of the city, it was like taking an alternative tour around the city. So we studied what kind of materials they collected, how they were collecting them, how the carts were made, and they didn't really work in a fixed location, and they were nomadic, which inspired us to think that in order to make work, you don't really need a gallery or workshop. You can kind of make do. So we didn't have a place to go and make work, and we didn't have any tools or materials. So we kept on thinking about what can we use that's on the street that we can turn into work, and we were thinking a lot about using the model of catadores and creating a new model of manufacturing for the city. So we focused on cans because you can get them for free, and we knew that aluminium had quite a low melting temperature at 600 degrees. And we designed a mobile furnace that could be moved around the city, and it can be cast on demand. We went to scrapyard in Sao Paulo and picked up some pieces from there and built our furnace. We didn't have a facility to weld, so we went to a nearby bike shop and had some bits welded, so it's quite rough looking thing.
So we had the aluminium to melt, but then we needed a free fuel, and you can actually run a furnace on cooking oil. So there's lots of fried food in Sao Paulo and fried food on the street, and when they're finished with the cooking oil, the small food stalls might pour this oil away, and then it blocks drains, and it's really bad for the rivers. But then this is a great free fuel, so we would collect that, and then we had the furnace we could feed in the fuel from the top. We had an air blower that ran off a car battery, and that was hot enough to melt our aluminium. Next we needed moulds, but conventional kind of cast iron moulds would cost a lot of money. They'd only enable you to do like very limited design, and they'd be expensive and heavy. So Sao Paulo's always kind of has a huge amount of building going on. So there's a lot of surplus building sand on the streets that are available, and sand casting is totally flexible, and you can just redo it and redo it. So we do a lot of experiments, picking up things on the street, putting them in sand molds, and just kind of constantly testing, refiring, and getting a lot of like bad results, and kind of learning. It's the first time we'd cast any metal, so it's like a really steep learning curve. But gradually we're getting results that are more like something that we could use, but still not good enough, but the great thing is you just remelt it. So yeah, it's on a slideshow play.
No, that's nothing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so essentially we wanted these stalls to be like a portrait of the streets. So yeah, they're all made of cans from the streets, they're melted with oil from the streets, and they were cast with sand from the streets, and the shapes were from the streets as well. So it was completely about design that expresses a really strong sense of place. And if you think about aluminium furniture, usually it's very industrial, the language, and it's very kind of perfect and global. And so this was really looking at the absolute opposite of that, and each one was a kind of unique piece. And it could create an income for the catadores, which was much higher than if they were just to sell aluminium cans by weight to a scrapyard. And the other thing that we wanted to do with the film was really celebrate catadores, because at the time the mayor of Sao Paulo thought that they made this city look untidy, and so it was really, we wanted to celebrate what they did, and actually think they're doing a great job. So we also expanded the collection into a more kind of like industrial design type series as well, and we really love tropical modernist masters from the 1950s, and so this chair was actually inspired by like shadows of palms on the street, and then we wanted to do something with glass bottles because they weren't really being recycled very much. And when you recycle glass bottles, they have to crush the glass down into a cullet, and then they have to reheat it again, and it's full of bubbles, and it takes a lot of energy, and it's not very high grade. So instead we wanted to just see if we could go to a glass blower and have the Heineken bottle in this situation slowly heated and blown without crushing it down in between times. So we did all these pendants that were based on fruit forms, and we made this kind of cactus lamp. Well, the wood was from offcuts from pine, so it's very sustainably sourced wood as well.
Where did you grow these? In Brazil?
Yeah,
Pieces?
and then at some point once we had the idea for all of this collection and this furnace system, we approached a gallery in Brazil and we presented the whole project to them, and they said, yeah, let's do a show. So that was great, because it was really difficult to kind of set something up in advance. So we always really believe in just kind of leaping into a situation and then making it happen.
And are these pieces kind of for you commercial part of this project that you are doing more as a performance, as a statement, but you did also these more kind of like final pieces, if they have some commercial income for you, or
Yeah, I mean,
or important?
I mean, the real incentive really for doing both the kind of very like organic stalls and then this kind of more like refined thing was really that we've always had this stance where like we really love sustainability and want to pursue sustainable design, but then also sustainable design can often be seen as frumpy and like let's not care about the aesthetics, the main thing is that it's better for the environment. And we always really disagreed with that and think no, just because it's sustainable you really have to kind of care about the way it looks as well, that we don't need furniture that looks like Weetabix or something, you know. And so it was really kind of thinking about more like tropical modernist type design, but also completely recycled. I mean, we hate the term recycled and upcycling, but it is all from the same stuff on the streets. And so it was kind of crazy because we'd arrived like 4 months earlier and walking around the streets and really not having a clue of how to go about making a project. And then at the end of this project, we were in the papers that were handed out at the traffic lights for this thing, and it went to like the Global News Network because the film that we made with Yurian as well did really well. It was like at the time our most viral film. So yeah, that was really a kind of key stage for us.
So this is what we call EII, which stands for economically important insect. This is what it makes, one of the most luxurious and prized materials in the world, and it created the Silk Road, which is one of the most important route for cultural exchange. And not only it exchanged goods, but ideas, religion, aesthetics. So we wanted to explore what would be the equivalent of the Silk Road now, contemporary Silk Road. China is actually the largest exporter of human hair and the largest importer of tropical hardwood. Asian hair is the strongest and grows 30% faster than Western hair and over 16 times faster than mahogany. So we love the look of materials like tortoiseshell and fawn and tropical hardwood, but they're all materials that's diminishing. And we wanted to create a material that could mimic the beauty of these materials. And also, as the population continues to grow, you can think of human hair as like a viable alternative to these precious materials. This is a hair supermarket in London. We used to go there quite a lot, and we used to go through lots of hair and read the label which said 100% human hair made in China. So we were really curious about this and wanted to trace it back to its root. Who's selling the hair, who's processing it, who's selling the hair. So we kept on visiting the hair supermarket, and we made some materials which we turned into a few pairs of glasses. And in 2014, we finally got to visit the world's largest human hair market in China.
So we went up to Shandong province, and it's this town that's really in the middle of nowhere. We had to get like a 4-hour train and then a 5-hour car to get there, and the whole town just operates on the human hair trade. So they have a lot of factories processing it. So yeah, it was really strange because you'd go to the hair market and there'd be all these bikers that come in clad in black leather, and they'd have rabbit skins on the front of their bike and sacks of human hair on the back of their bike. And it was very Mad Max, and we knew that it would make a really incredible movie to show this story as well, because nobody had ever filmed here before. And yeah, so we spent quite a bit of time researching there and planning. So it's quite interesting because at the beginning of the process, it's quite it can be quite repulsive. You know, naturally repulsive to kind of be around this disembodied hair. But then the way that they there is a real craft to processing it, and by the end it becomes this beautiful like silk-like material, like bushels of golden wheat almost. And it's very interesting for us always, that transformation of materials. We're really interested in luxury design, but so often luxury design is really, you're looking at luxury materials like marble or brass, and we really love when luxury design is about design as the transforming element. So you could take something that's low value or not appreciated or even repulsive and turn it into something desirable. So we didn't mention, but we've been experimenting with a lot of different bioresins, and this one is the one that we love the most, which is actually a byproduct of the paper industry. It comes from pine trees, so fast growth forests, and it's completely non-toxic, so we don't even need to use like masks or anything when we're using it. It doesn't have an odor. It's really great, and so that's what we've been mixing with the hair to enable us to make this kind of hard horn-like material. And then we're making these parquet blocks and putting it into this dressing table, which was inspired by Shanghai Deco. So we're based in Shanghai, and really inspired by how in Shanghai you get this great fusion of like French Art Deco with chinoiserie and Ming Dynasty furniture, and that for us was still the language of the Silk Road, which is all about the fusion of cultures. So this is a series of objects that we produced.
You did it for a gallery?
Yeah, so this was for Pearl Lam Gallery that's based in Shanghai. And yeah, I think she's the only one that's crazy enough that when we presented, like we wanted to do a furniture collection with human hair, she was like, okay, let's do it and let's bring it to Basel. And then we thought, oh, that's really exciting, that's really great. And then we'd kind of have these sleepless nights where we'd be thinking, this is a really terrible idea. We're going to like the most kind of luxury design show in the world, and we're presenting like human hair furniture. It's really going to be a disaster. So it kind of pushed us, that fear pushed us really hard to like really work really hard on the project and the objects. So this is another film that we made with Yurian, and we've been really fortunate to be working with him for the last 5 years.
So, on to talking about Teacher, which is almost our first project that we worked on together. Teacher has always been self-initiated because we always failed to get funding, and we always wanted to go out into the Jaya, which is where the ocean currents converge and they collect plastic, and well, they collect and break down the plastic into very, very small pieces. But it's a very long way in the ocean, so we started by going to a local beach and collecting various types of plastic that we found on the coast. And we also made our own furnace out of scrap, so that we can melt these plastic into pieces. What we made with it wasn't very successful, but because we were working very hands-on with the material, we got to learn how the material behaved. And a few months later, we still wanted to go to the Jaya, but it's thousands of miles away, so the next best thing was to go out with a fisherman to just a few miles offshore. And on the fishing boat, we made those small stools on the boat. And 3 years later, we still wanted to go to the Jaya, but we had no funding still, so we started this Kickstarter campaign. Unfortunately, it was successful, so that took us to the Jaya for 8 days, from Azores to Lanzarote, 8 days across the North Atlantic Jaya. We designed a new self-sufficient plastic melting device which uses the sun's energy to melt and process plastic. It works like a big parabolic mirror which reflects the sun's energy, which focuses it onto this tube in the middle, and with a hand cranked winch.
Yeah.
It squeezes the plastic onto the bed in the middle of the mirror. And we made it so that we can flat pack it and take it in our luggage with us.
So the amazing thing about the Azores is that it has this incredible history of whaling and hunting whales, and then they would kind of have these whaling boats where men were in these really horrific conditions, and to stop them mutinying when there was no whales and no winds, they would be given kind of handcrafts to do, like embroidery, and they would kind of carve on the whale's teeth, which are like a kind of ivory. And so we're really interested in the idea of making at sea and maritime crafts. And so this is really about kind of the future of maritime crafts in a way, collecting plastic at sea and making these objects with it. So this is the extruder on the boat, and for us it was kind of important to use none of it requires any electricity. The winch is just like the sailing winches that you get on a sailing boat. The gimbal effect, so it can move with waves, is just like you get on sailing boats, with the kind of way that the cookers are set so that you can cook on them while you're at sea. And yeah, it requires no energy, so you can do it in the remotest parts of the world, because this plastic is this is a really surreal thing about our times, that we've got this completely synthetic material that is totally man-made, and it's getting to the furthest reaches of our wilderness, to parts of the ocean where humans might not have even been. So we're trawling for it, and it's actually a really difficult thing to collect plastic at sea. We don't actually believe that it's the answer. We think that the problem is on land with the use of disposable plastics. But you get these tiny fragments if you put out a trawl net for long enough. And so you can, painstakingly colour separate them, and you can sort out what's kind of organic matter from plastic. And so we did that and then fed it into our machine, and yeah, you get this thing that kind of looks like seabird poo, kind of squeezing out. It's really not very nice, but then you can kind of craft it afterwards, and it has these kind of swirling patterns. So this is our kind of version of the whale's tooth that was like the Azores kind of piece in a way. So there's 5 major gyres around the world which collect sea plastic, and so we wanted to make a kind of vernacular like object for each of them. So this is the North Atlantic gyre, so it's about kind of whaling and the winch. This is the South Pacific gyre, so we selected colours that would be able to give us a kind of turtle shell effect. And so this is quite tiki. This is our Indian Ocean gyre. They have the biggest shipping traffic in the world, and coral seas and all of this. This is our North Pacific gyre, so it's about crab nets and albalone shell, which they collect up there. And this is our South Atlantic piece, so it's about polar exploration and navigating by the night sky. So this was in a department store called Selfridges. They have a gallery space below the store, and we wanted to connect it to, I mean, for us it's about making a kind of provocative, like raising awareness thing as well, but we wanted to connect it to a real change, and we teamed up with Selfridges, and they basically banned the plastic bag from their store a couple of years ago, and this time they've banned the plastic water bottles. So that was really great.
So last year in June, we got awarded the Designer of the Future Award at the Design Miami Basel, which gave us an opportunity to work with Swarovski. So we thought a lot about crystals as materials, like it's used in technology, like the first radio set it uses crystal to transmit sound, and also that silica is the second most common material in the Earth crust.
And it had been 120 years of Swarovski they were celebrating last year. Daniel Swarovski was actually from Bohemia, and he moved to Austria, and he was the first to kind of mechanically cut crystal. And so we wanted to tell the story of 120 years in the future, and the idea of a crystal planet being discovered, because we'd read in the news that there was a planet that scientists speculated had a diamond crust. It's called the Super Earth. And so we were thinking, if there is a crystal planet discovered in the future, and if they need to terraform it, then Swarovski would be the perfect company, because they really know how to cut crystal. So it's this kind of quite B-movie idea for a film, in a sense. And so we did a lot of research, and we joined the British Interplanetary Society. Yeah, and we did a lot of research into designers that are designing for science fiction. So it turns out there's quite a heritage of like designers designing specifically for sci-fi films. So like Sid Mead, for example, did the design for Blade Runner, and he's an industrial designer that's designing motor cars for Ford. And there was some really amazing. It's an amazing space to design for, in a sense, because it's really, design exists in the real world and we're sitting on it, but also it exists in our imagination and in our kind of, it can exist in a kind of fantastical way.
So Swarovski has recently brought out this new product called Zero Crystal, which is the world's smallest precision cut crystals in the world. So it's 0.6 millimeters in diameter. So we wanted to really use this cutting edge technology to create and tell this grand narrative about this crystal planet and a young engineer going to the planet to terraform it. One of the narratives that one of the narratives is that the engineer would bombard the planet with sound waves to transform it. So we experimented a lot with sound waves and using a technology called cymatics, which is basically visualizing sound waves and feeding sound frequencies from underneath the table to create these very decorative patterns with the crystals. So we got a sound engineer on board, and we experimented from 10,000 hertz, and we went down one by one to 100 hertz and kind of wrote down all the numbers that gave interesting patterns.
So one of the things about the sounds that give the nicest patterns really hurt your ears, and they're really uncomfortable to hear. So we had to kind of make and it was going into Design Basel, which is kind of very quiet, kind of luxury show. And people have spent a lot of money to kind of have booths there, and we're playing this really painful sound. So we had to make a table to kind of insulate it, and we used glass foam, which is aerated glass, and it had this kind of sound absorbing quality, and it's kind of very black and spacey.
So this is a table, and also we designed a flat hourglass which is about 2 meters long high, and it has 3 million precision cut crystals in there, and it rotates every 10 minutes, so we had to calculate the amount of crystals that would go into be able to rotate in 10 minutes, to finish in 10 minutes. And the digital display shows the hour.
And the interesting thing is, unlike a regular sand hourglass where you get like a flat horizon sinking, you get these really geometric shapes occurring in there because of the way the facets lock together. And so the other thing that we wanted to tell the story of was the fact that we're researching what is the first cut crystal, and actually the flint hand axe, that's the first tool discovered to be made by mankind, is actually flint is silica, and it's a crystal, and it's the same base material that makes crystal. It's just less refined, it's got more impurities in the minerals, and so we love that it's still part of this kind of story. From the first kind of knapped object right to the kind of latest precision cut crystal. So we went on a flint knacking course with this man that specialises in living like a caveman and doing courses about how to kind of make your bow and arrow and all of these kind of things. And we went flint knacking. And one of the things that we're thinking about is if there was this crystal planet, you'd need to make some of the items on the planet, because it costs so much to take things into outer space, that one of the things that NASA are looking at is how do we 3D print moon dust, and how do we create things from the resources on the planet they want to colonize. So this is our caveman in the studio, and we did a mixture of making a lot of sets and green screen. And it's the first time that we'd been able to work with Yurian in a kind of proper big film set with a crew, and it wasn't a documentary where we're going to a real place, so we had to create absolutely everything. So we created this control panel and this landscape that we filmed in our flat. And then some of it was, that's like a real NASA photo of Mars, and we were allowed to use NASA photos. They released them for free to the public, so we had that wrapped around the planet. And then we wanted it to be quite retro and B-movie, so we were referring back to Russian spaceships. Yeah, so we've got the movie, and we could end on seeing that. Sorry? We could end on seeing the movie for Terraforming. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this hasn't been released yet. It's being released next week.
It's a world premiere.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
I wanted to ask you if you feel more as a designer or artist.
Well, because we don't come from, product design, he comes from art, but it feels like what we do can be anything. We don't want to kind of box it into a category. We always strive to make whatever's the most interesting, whether that would be art or design.
Yeah, I guess the truth is that we really love lots and lots of things, and we're not very disciplined.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, you were talking about that
Yeah.
you are not going to Salone del Mobile in Milan, but you are going
Yeah.
to Basel.
Yeah,
and it's
but then we're not going
also
to any
if,
other
if you are
things, yeah.
more in this like design scene or art.
yeah, I mean,
environment.
I would definitely not, like, I don't think any kind of art galleries or art people would even know about us or know who we are. So we're not in an art scene, we're definitely in a design scene. But the design world is very big and diverse, and I mean, to be honest, I feel like outsider in both, in a sense.
Okay.
Like, not in a good way, in a way like if I can get away with get away with it.
Any questions?
Yeah, you said that you don't like this upcycling and recycling buzzwords, but anyway, you are in the thing.
Yeah.
What's your response to that?
Well, I guess that like the thing is that I feel that good design should take on like environmental impact just as a kind of starting point, so I don't really like the idea of green design being its own category. I just think we should be aware of that, and that's not to say everyone should make everything organic, but just to kind of know that that's a major problem facing our world, and so also I just don't really think that in nature there's no such thing as upcycling and recycling. There's just kind of transformation all the time, and for me I like the idea that you can kind of assign closer to nature, which is that reusing everything's got a use if it's in the right place at the right time. It just automatically sounds a bit.
It feels like it already comes with a lot of association, which
Yeah.
is not very positive. So if we can create a new word for it, that's sustainable, desirable, and eco, but a different word.
And it stops, it stops people necessarily like engaging with the work further than the fact that it's sustainable. So it can be actually quite annoying, because you might like present something, and if it's presented as sustainable, then immediately you get people asking lots and lots of questions about, but it's not perfect because of this, and it's not perfect, and just judging it on the sustainability thing. Whereas we're not just that; we're really interested in making something that's creative or imaginative or all these other things. But it can stop people engaging with the concept and all these other things.
Yeah, it's great because Urian's so good at telling the story visually, which means that you don't have to have any spoken words, which means the film can go international. And also with a complicated kind of subject like sea chair or diagraph about the plastic in the ocean, there's so much information within that one project. It's quite hard to kind of communicate that project without having a lot of text on the website. So that's a really great way of kind of summarizing and communicating.
Yeah, and I think the key thing, I mean, Urian said about the conveying kind of an emotion and a feeling, and for us that's really important. Like, people have said, we don't need more chairs, there's enough chairs to seat the entire human population. But the function of a chair isn't necessarily to sit on it. It can also be a tool and a vehicle for ideas and for emotion and kind of all kinds of things. And it's kind of like saying we don't need another pop song. You always need more kind of music to express our time and our ideas and our thoughts right now. So that's the way I see design. It's kind of like not too dissimilar from Bowie or something. Yeah, I mean, we get really excited by places, and we really love when design can express like a sense of place. So it's like a double thing, really. I mean, it's going to be more sustainable than kind of importing vast distances and all of these things, and sustaining like a local livelihood. But also, it's just a really, it's the thing that we love to kind of research, is like different ways people interpret design around the world. And we get really excited by materials as well, really obsessed with like researching that side.
Yeah, because it's really different researching from being in London and kind of gathering all the information as to going to a place and really experiencing the place as a local. You get like such a different perspective into the place, and like you see really interesting solutions to a problem that you wouldn't even think of if you're not there. So yeah, really interesting.
Yeah, and on the other side of that, when you come back, it's like I think it was Yeats that said that the gift of travel is returning to your own country with kind of the eyes of a foreigner, and so you see the qualities in your own culture that you might have kind of been blind to until you go away. And so that's been really good, because now we've got like projects in London that are very, very to do with London, like creating street furniture for like a very central district of London, and it's been great to be away from it and then kind of return and see what makes it unique,
Can I ask you said you are obsessed by the local products, but have you ever thought, and have you tried to work with local artists? I mean, have you thought about opening your also procedure and in the phase of creation? Do you cooperate with the local artists?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something that we'd like to do more, really. But with the Sao Paulo collection, it just wouldn't have happened without the local craftsmen. They're really like incredible. They taught me about sand casting. They taught me about they did the glass blowing, the lots and lots of things, and so that was really incredible. I mean, we make a lot ourselves as well, but it's often with local craftsmen that we're working with.
I don't know if you can call it collaboration, but our sea chair is totally open source, so anyone in the world can download it, make it themselves, and so the more people who's making the chairs, the better. So in a way, it's a collaboration.